scripture in the Torah that when we lose a loved one, we tear kriya, for a garment has been torn from us. We accept the Lord's judgment, and accepting God's judgment is a merit for the family. We ask the Almighty to spare us from any further calamity. So we rend our garments after the blessing. We want to recite the blessing, to which we respond Amen, and then Baruch Dayan HaEmes, blessed is the true judge. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Dayan HaEmes. Amen. Amen. Baruch Dayan HaEmes, blessed is the true judge. For a parent, we tear over the heart, on the left side over the heart. It's customary to begin with some psalms. Happy is the one who has not followed the counsel of the wicked, nor stood in the path of sinners, nor sat in the company of the scornful. Rather, that one's delight is in the Torah of the Lord, meditating in God's Torah day and night. And that one will be like a tree planted by streams of water that yields its fruit in season, whose leaf will not wither, and whatever that one does prospers. Not so the wicked, who are like chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore the wicked shall not survive judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord loves the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked is doomed. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai Ravi, Lo Echsor, Benoshneshe Yarbitzeini, Almei menuchos Yenaleini, Nafshi yeshoivev Yancheini, B'maglei tzedek, Leman Shemo Gam Ki Elech V'getz Almoves Lo Irara Ki Ato Imadi Shevtecha Umeshantecha Hema Yenachamuni Begetzoireroi Dishanto Vashemen Roishi Koisi Revoya Achtov Vochesed Yedefuni Kol Yemei Chayai Veshavti Beveis Adonai Leorech Yamim. You may recite with me Psalm 23, a song of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. God causes me to lie down in lush pastures. God leads me beside tranquil waters. God restores my soul and guides me in righteous paths for God's name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your scepter and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in full view of my adversaries. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for length of days. We have come together to mourn our loss, celebrate the life of our beloved Stephen Eisenberg, Shimshon ben Wolf Halevi. Steve was much loved at Menorah Park, where I'm one of the chaplains, was an important part of our community. His wife Toby, Yibadal L'chaim Tovim, she should live long and be well. Also an important part of our campus, a presence there, having first met her when she was caring for her mother, Zichron Levracha, and at Menorah Park. And then, sadly, Steve joined us not that long after. And Steve was a very well-liked gentleman at Menorah Park who always wanted to be helpful. He would help us in our congregation and do whatever he could to be a part of our spirituality at Menorah Park. So I am humbled to be here with you today, and I thank the family for allowing me this really privilege. Steve was born to Norma Nechama Beckman and William Eisenberg, his father Wolf. Wolf means, of course, Velvel or Zev, Ze'ev. So his father was a Levi, which of course makes him a Levi. Shimshon ben Wolf HaLevi, one of the Levites, that tribe that's dedicated to uplifting our people with Torah and spirituality. And Norma was from Columbus, his mom, and Bill, his father, from Philadelphia. And Bill was a lieutenant colonel, and they met Norma in Columbus. And they had 3 children, Edward and Stephen and Susan. Stephen was born in 1947, named Shimshon. His father, William, was in sales. His mother, Norma, was a homemaker when the children were at home. Later on, to help the family along, she became an administrative assistant. Steve went to Whitehall Elementary and High School, and he played football and wrestled in high school as well. He continued on, went to Ohio State, where he also continued with wrestling. But after, I think it was about a year in Ohio State, he decided to enlist in the United States Army on his own. He wanted to help defend his nation, his country, and he enlisted and went off to Vietnam. He went to officer training school, and Toby met Steve at a cousin's wedding. They dated for a couple of weeks and became engaged. But Toby had known the family well, so it was only natural for her. Steve was in Vietnam for 1 year, from November 15th of 1968 to November 15th of 1969, and we all know about the dedication of our soldiers who fought in Vietnam. You know, those of our soldiers who fought to defend this country in World War II were lauded, of course, and loved. They fought a clear enemy, and the country was in total support. But having grown up in the 60s myself, we know about the terrible situation in our country at that time, that soldiers were not given the honor and the credit for, very often, for their dedication. For their dedication was no different from the soldiers that fought in World War II. You know, as far as a soldier is concerned, he's ready to give his life for his country. He doesn't choose the battles. He just goes to defend his nation. And Steve was just that kind of a person. And he went to defend his country. He received a Bronze Star and honors for his devotion. He got married to Toby on December 20th of 1969 at the original Landerhaven. I believe Rabbi Horowitz was their Masader Kedushin, the rabbi that officiated at their wedding. And then in 1973, a great joy, a simcha in the family. Michael came along. August 14th, 1973, Michael was born and brought much joy to his family, an extended family. Then was that 20 years later then that Michelle, Tzivia ben Yamina was born, and a second blessing for the family, to have a boy and a girl. And that was a great joy for Stephen, of course, to watch his children grow. And when they were married in Columbus, Toby was teaching 5th and 6th grade to help along. They were living in Columbus, and Steve was finishing college at Ohio State. They went to visit Israel. They also toured Greece and Rome to celebrate Steve's graduation, of course, completing his college. And they lived in Cleveland eventually. Not long after, they lived in Cleveland. They bought a home in University Heights and in Beechwood. Michael had his bar mitzvah at Park Synagogue. Michelle had her bat mitzvah at Park Synagogue. And another great simcha, of course, Michael's marriage to Lynn in July 19th of 1997 in New York. And Matthew, born on September 9th, 2001. Drew, another grandchild coming in the world August 20th, 2003. And Charlie Rose, April 2nd, 2009. Another blessing to the family. Steve was a dedicated and hard worker. He held back no energy devoted to his family and to the company that he worked for. He was the president of R.L. Lipton Distributing and Tri-County Distributing in Youngstown. Steve worked long hours. You'd say 24 hours a day, really. He was best friends with Bob Lipton, of blessed memory, of course. And when Bob passed away, the board of directors made Steve the president after Bob's passing. And he really fought to protect the company. Of course, there were a lot of individuals that tried to challenge the company, and Steve protected its future and stood up for its future. He worked very hard for all of the family's sake. He was very strong-minded. The family says often enough, it was his way or the highway, as we say, that he understood what needed to be done, and he wanted it to be done in that direction. He gave clear direction, I'm sure, both at work and at home. They would compare him really to a leader, you know, the alpha male, a leader, deeply sensitive and caring. You know, Eisenberg means Eisen, steel, iron or steel. Berg is a mountain, and iron
An iron mountain of a man is exactly what he was, very much as his name describes. You know, in the Talmud study, in the yeshiva rabbinical school, when you say somebody's really right, you say in Yiddish, Eisengerecht. He's like metal, like steel, is he correct? And so was Stephen in his way that he dealt with his company, with his family. And he didn't just tell others to work. He was not that kind of a human being. He started everything on his own to work his way from the ground up. So, for example, if he came into the company, maybe he worked a little while, and then even in maybe housekeeping, just to see what it entails to get everything set up correctly in the company correctly. And maybe he did the forklift or whatever they might have. In other words, he did every position so he understood it thoroughly. Toby appreciated the expression. He didn't just tell people what to do. He talked their talk and he walked their walk. He made sure to teach himself every aspect of the business from ground up. And that really was the kind of person he was, so devoted to his company. And of course, he was the same way with family, devoted to the family as well. It was heartbreaking for us to lose Stephen Shimshon on Purim as the Megillah was being read at Menorah Park. But of course, we know Purim is a holiday. In fact, a joyous holiday, a time of salvation for the Jewish people when our enemy Haman wanted to destroy us and extinguish the light of God on this earth with his idols. And Mordechai and Esther, the Jewish queen, overthrew his wicked plans. And as we read the Megillah, Steve's soul departed on this great holiday, which is, of course, indicative of his lofty status. To pass away on a Yom Tov, we know, is a special privilege. The soul goes immediately to high places on a holiday of that caliber. In fact, we say of Purim, a pur means a lot, like a lottery. And in the Kabbalah, they talk about Purim being so great that Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, which we know, the Day of Atonement is such a holy day. We don't eat for 26 hours, and we fasting in the synagogue, and we're praying. Our eyes running with tears, praying to God to forgive us and give humanity another chance. And Yom Kippur is such a holy day, the Day of Atonement. But the Mekubalim, the Kabbalists, teach us Yom Kippur. Ki in Hebrew can mean like. Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is only like Purim. That on Purim you can reach even higher levels than Yom Kippur. Why? Because it's easy to be a saint when you're fasting 26 hours and praying in the synagogue all day. It's easy to live like an angel for a day. But God has many angels. He made us to be human beings. Anshe Kodesh Tiyun Li, the Almighty said we should be people of sanctity. And to be a person of sanctity is much more challenging. To eat so that we're eating, to have energy, to make a better world. To drink even wine, so that we wish to elevate the world. As you know we do, we use the wine for Kiddush and Havdalah and other holy prayers. To do all those things, physical things, but to do them for the right reason is in a way loftier than Yom Kippur when we're fasting, because we have to live our physical lives with sanctity. And so he was that kind of a human being, and therefore his soul departed on that special day. And I'm sure it's no coincidence that, he dealt in alcohol, right? And there's one holiday when we are given the mandate to drink a little alcohol. What is that, of course? The day he passed away on Purim. Which is probably why Bob Lipton named his son Mordechai. You keep telling me about Mordechai Lipton, right? Of course, Mordechai being a Purim name. But really, Stephen's whole aura was one that elevated people around him. When he would come to shul, and it wasn't easy for him to come to the synagogue, he would push himself. He even was called to the Torah. And one more thing that really struck me is, as so divine providence, we say bashert, So Steve passed away Wednesday night on Purim, and all of Israel read a story this week, the Torah. What did we read? The Parsha, the portion of Kisisa. We read about one of the most challenging times in the history of the Jewish people. And there were two challenging times in the Jewish people's history. Of course, one of them was we had just gotten the Torah on Mount Sinai. The Lord God had elevated us beyond imagination. We left Egypt, and we were brought higher and higher till we received the Torah. And Moses, our leader from the tribe, of course, of Levi, a Levite, just like our Stephen, Moses went up on Mount Sinai to get the Torah. He comes back down, and we're in deep trouble. We had built a golden calf. We had abandoned so quickly the teaching of Moses. A terrible low point for the Jewish people. And in the synagogue on Shabbat we read what happened. Moses cried out, Mi la Hashem Elai, whoever is with God, join me. And the Torah tells us, and I quote, Vayasfu elav, who gathered around Moses? Kol b'nei Levi, all of the tribe of the Levites. And that's what we read this week in the Torah about the tribe of the Levites who sacrificed and were ready to give their lives for the Holy Torah. And that's what we read this Shabbat as we were waiting to be with our Stephen to bring him to rest. Shimshon ben Wolf HaLevi, to the Levites, they were ready to save the whole nation, which they did with their devotion. And how were they able to? Because a Levite has a part of all Israel in his soul. God never gave the Levites a portion in the land of Israel. They don't have a portion. They were scattered about the land of Israel to uplift all the people with Torah. And so was Stephen. He took it upon himself to teach every aspect and everything he did, to align and feel an attachment to every worker, to be a true leader. And it was so apropos that we read in the synagogue the story of the Levite this week and Moses and the greatness of the Levite tribe. I believe that we're going to have the opportunity to hear Michael speak and Michelle as well. So I'm going to surrender the podium for a bit.
We would like to begin this morning by thanking everyone near and far for their endless love, support during our dad's health struggle for the past couple of years. And today, we are not only saying goodbye, but we are here to celebrate and honor our dad's life.
Our dad was tough. He was a fighter. He fought in Vietnam, he fought for his family, and he fought for his life until he took his final breath on Wednesday.
As we all know, life and life circumstances are not always fair. Our dad was retired, ready to pack up the house, our mother, and move to Boca. He wanted to spend time golfing, endless hours, fishing, and watching his grandkids grow up. His new idea of a vacation home was at my sister's house in beautiful Lyndhurst, Ohio.
Most of you know, our dad was stubborn, difficult, type A, and occasionally opinionated. He never really knew how to keep quiet. And on that note, we would like to share some of those ridiculous stories with you. After all, laughter is the best medicine. My dad wasn't super religious at all. But when 3 Jewish holidays came every year, he thought he was a rabbi. He took it to a whole nother level. He thought he could read Hebrew, which he couldn't. He faked it. When I was 7 or 8 years old, it was a Jewish holiday of Passover. My brother and I were reading the prayers phonetically because we couldn't read Hebrew. And we just started laughing hysterically. My dad got up from the table, grabbed me by the arm, locked me in the bathroom until I was able to learn how to take Passover seriously. He locked me in an hour with our mean as hell cat, Snickers. Sadly, this next example was only a few years ago, which means I was like 28. My parents taught my brother and I how to appreciate culture, fine foods, nice dine-in experiences. No expense was too much until a dinner we had with some of our friends. It started out nice, a really nice dinner of friends. Until the bill came. My dad had smoke coming out of his ears. Giving me the look of death because I, for God forbid, ordered 4 scallops for $32. You would have thought I used his credit card to buy a Chanel and a Rolls Royce. Thank God, his friends, my Uncle Howard and my Uncle Denny, took him out of the restaurant to talk him off the ledge. I even offered him $20. So, Dad, I will now use my credit card and enjoy some scallops in honor of you.
Obviously, a lot of you guys know my dad was in the beverage business, and I worked in the summers through college and winter break, and my father decided to find jobs for me that no one else would be allowed to do, like legally through the union. So I had to go through broken bottles with my hands to try and find the beer bottles that didn't break, and then try and make 6-packs or 12-packs out of that. And then one interesting time, this was during a winter break, my dad said, you know, the rafters in this warehouse, they're dirty. So he put together on a tow motor a little box for me to stand in. Had to be 30, 40, 50 feet high. I don't even know how high it was. So I'm standing with he took a shop vac and put like a 20-foot extension on this thing. And I was in a lot better shape then, but I'm up there, you know, cleaning off the rafters. I have to yell down to someone that's in the warehouse if they happen to walk by to move me to a different place. If I took 5 minutes because my shoulders were burning from carrying this thing, he would get on the loudspeaker because he had all the monitors in his office and yell to me, you know, I'm not paying you to take a break. Get back to work. So those were a few there. And then there was one interesting time. My dad was a pretty good fisherman that he thought he really thought he was, but he wasn't. So when I was living in New York, the one thing he always did was we'd go down to the pier, rent a little metal boat with a motor, took my 2 boys, MJ and Drew, and we'd go fishing. He'd rent it for 4 hours, the rods, everything. So my dad, we did this for years. We never caught anything. But the last time we decided to do this, he thought maybe I'll stand up in the boat because maybe I could, the fish, you know, could see everything a little better. Didn't realize that he was at the edge. He fell into the water, into the ocean. I had to grab him by the leg, pull him back up. The kids were hysterically crying. They wanted to go back. My dad was soaking wet, and he said no. And finally, after some convincing, he dropped me and my kids off at the dock, and we waited for 2 hours in the sun while he sat there and finished his 2 hours of fishing. Guess how many fish he caught? 0. So those were just a few. There's thousands of stories that we could go into, but just a few highlights. And finally, you know, Dad, we will always love, cherish you, keep your memory alive, and it's time now that you rest in peace
You deserve it.
because you finally deserve it at this point. Thank you guys all for coming and honoring our father.
Thank you for your support. Okay, you go.
Everything has its season, and there is a time for everything under the heaven. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot the planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to wreck and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to shun embraces, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to rend and a time to mend, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. Menoro Park won't be the same without Stephen with us. He really was an important part of our community. And he really gave of his all to help us. There are times we struggled with a minion. You know, we are a facility of handicapped individuals. And he was there for us to be our 10th man, and we will miss him. At this time, we would ask if you would please rise for the Kel Male prayer. El Male Rachamim Shoichen Bameroyemim Hametzei Menucha Nechoino Al Kantvei Ashechino B'mahai Elois Kedoshim Utahorim Kezohar Harakia Mazirim Es Nishmas Shimshon Ben Wolf Halevi Sheholach Lioilamoi Mavur Shanachnu Mispalim Baratz Karas Nishmasoi Began Eden Tehei Menuchasoi Lochein Bal HaRachamim Yastireu B'Seisek Nafav Lioilamim V'yitzror B'tzror HaChayim Es Nishmasoi Adonai Hu Nachalosoi V'yanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkavoi V'nohoi Mar Amen. God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant proper rest on the sheltering wings of your presence, in the lofty levels of the holy and pure, who shine as the brightness of the firmament, to the soul of Shimshon, the son of Wolf, the Levi, who has gone to his world, and for whose memory we pray. May his rest be in paradise. May the Master of Compassion bring him under the cover of God's wings, and bind his soul in the bond of life. May the Lord be his heritage, and may he rest on his resting place in peace. And let us respond, Amen. You may be seated. At this time, it's customary to ask forgiveness. I ask mechila from Stephen. Perhaps I wronged you. Is it really possible to honor a human being in the way that they deserve? Please forgive me. And anyone who may have slighted you in any way, we ask forgiveness from you, for myself, for our community at Menorah Park, for your family, and the community at large. You should be an advocate for your family, a Melitz Yosher, in the heavenly spheres, and an advocate for your widow, Toby, who was always at your side, so devoted, always there, making it look easy with her pleasant demeanor and the way she does things, but always there. Steve and Toby even got a special film for the residents at Menorah Park to enjoy, a Judaic film, and I've showed it, I don't know, maybe 100 times in different pavilions, how much joy it gives the residents. And then, they're always thinking about to share the joy with others. At this time, I want to thank the Berkowitz-Kumin-Bookatz Funeral Home for their sensitivity and caring. And we would ask that the pallbearers would come forward.